Now we're really going to dive in, like, for reals this time. So, clearing mental clutter. Sheila from Minnesota. Clearing mental clutter. First, let's identify first what mental clutter even is. So, there's really quite a long list of it. So just some examples, and again, this is not a comprehensive list by any means, and you can feel free to throw in the comments section anything you would consider mental clutter. As I give you some examples, it might trigger some thoughts in your mind as well. So that inner critic inside who, says things like, "Oh, your new haircut's not very nice, Leah Marie." That's mental clutter. Or any like that negative inner chatter that we say to ourselves, like, "Oh, I look so fat in this," or "Oh my God, I'm so dumb. How could I not know that?" Or any of that stuff, any of that negative inner chatter, mental clutter. Regrets. If you look back with regrets and look at things that you wished you had done differently or wished you had done sooner, any of those regrets, that's mental clutter. Now, again, as I go through this list, it's not to say there's something wrong with you. If you struggle with this stuff, we all do. But I'm going to give you an idea of what they are so then we can talk about how to clean them up and how to have them not drain so much energy from you. So inner critic, regrets, shame. When we feel ashamed, that ties right into that inner critic. Brene Brown, who I love and I mention here all the time, if you're not familiar with her work, you must check out her TED Talks and anything else. Just Google Brene Brown. But she often talks about the difference between shame and guilt. Guilt is I did something bad. Shame is I am bad. Really powerful distinction, right? So when you say I'm feeling ashamed, like that's really such a comment on what you think of yourself as a person. So shame is a big source of mental clutter. Grudges. If someone pissed you off in the past and you're kind of hanging on to the anger even though maybe you've sorted it or talked it through, anything like that, any kind of grudges that you're holding on to can be a big source of mental clutter. Old beliefs and old conditioning, like old ways of thinking that maybe at one point served you but doesn't anymore. So what are some old ways that you're thinking, or some old ways of doing things that just doesn't feel like a fit anymore, but you just kind of do them because that's how you do them. Draining thoughts about physical clutter. So this is where physical and mental clutter go hand in hand. When you have physical clutter and you're thinking about, oh, I need to take care of that pile, or I need to go through my closet, or I have to open my mail, anything like that, that's mental clutter, having the draining thoughts about physical clutter. Just gonna pause. Looks like Trish might be having an issue with audio. Is anyone else having issue with audio? Trish, if you can hear me, just try refreshing your screen. Melissa, maybe you can respond to her. Sarah, you're having trouble with audio? Is that what that yes is? I'm just going to pause here and make sure people can hear me.
I can hear you, Pam, no issues.
Pamela, no issues. It just jumped once for Sarah. Yeah, so that's no problem. It's great. So it must be an individual internet issue, Trish. So if you can hear me, go ahead and refresh your screen and come back in. I think that'll help. And good to see you here, Pamela. I hadn't seen you before. So draining relationships, another form of mental clutter, because you're thinking about the friend who drives you nuts, who always just kind of calls and complains, or you're thinking about how unfulfilled you feel in your marriage, let's say, or you have a boss who drives you crazy. Whatever kind of relationship it is that drains your energy, that's mental clutter because you're ruminating about it, you're thinking about it, occupying a lot of your time. Woulda, coulda, shouldas. This is a big form of mental clutter. That woulda, coulda, shoulda, like, again, it's kind of ties into regrets, but it's like, I should have done this, should have done that, all mental clutter. And then to-do lists. Yes, believe it or not, to-do lists. Just thinking about what you want to do, have to do, need to do, all of that thinking about it is very draining, and that's a form of mental clutter. One quick note on that. One way that this is one little trick I use to immediately shift the feeling behind my to-do list so it feels less like a weight and clutter and more like exciting opportunities is I call it a to-do list. Silly little shift, but I'm telling you, it's powerful. If I write something down, if I'm making a written list, I'll call it my to-do list. Like, ta-da! This is what I get to do today, you know? It's just a nice little thing to look at and kind of like shifts the perspective a little bit. So let's start by calling it a to-do list. It's already going to help. All right, Pamela, I'm glad you're out of hiding. Yeah, so to-do list. So with all of those examples of mental clutter swirling around, it's like it can be even more overwhelming, right? When you list them all out and think about what that mental clutter is. Here is the fastest way to start clearing mental clutter. Talk about immediate gratification. You ready? If this is your only takeaway, you are going to thank me. Fastest way to start clearing mental clutter, mind dump. Doing a mind dump. So what I mean is you get a pad of paper. For me, mind dumps work best, pen to paper. Sometimes I do it on the computer as well. But I just sit down and I empty just about everything that I can from my mind onto the page. Anytime I'm feeling scattered, unfocused, overwhelmed, stressed out, aggravated, if my temper is short, whatever it is, I dump my mind out. Dump it onto a piece of paper, into a document. I don't care how you do it, just do it. I'm telling you, as soon as you empty your mind, you'll be able to think more clearly. I often hear from a lot of clients who will say, I'm scared to see it all down in one place. It's going to feel so overwhelming, and I'd rather kind of live in denial. Here's the thing. It is somewhere. If it's not on that paper, it's in your mind. And I'm telling you, it takes much more energy to hold that to-do list in your mind than it does on the page. So you are always better off emptying your mind onto the page. And think of it this way. Your brain is a computer, not a container. So if you use your brain as a container and it's there to hold everything, because it's actually a computer, it's going to function like any other hard drive. The more files you put on that hard drive, the more you load up the storage, the slower it's going to run. It's going to lag, it's going to drag, it's going to crash, it's going to freeze, all of that stuff. Your brain is not meant to hold a bunch of thoughts. It's meant to process thoughts, calculate solutions, strategize, all of that. That's what the brain is for. So if you're using it as a container, it's just going to be so overwhelming for you. So I promise you, you dump that down, empty that brain out, immediate mental clutter clearing, and immediate benefit from it. Kathy says, makes sense. That's probably why I feel so much better after journaling as it gets it all out. Yes, it's amazing the difference it makes. Hey, Cheryl, didn't see you there. Welcome. It is amazing the difference it makes if you just empty that brain and let it operate as the amazing, powerful computer that it is. It's just not meant to be a container. So empty that out. You will have immediate clarity around your mental clutter. And then you have it all down on the page, right? So now you've got your mind empty. It's all out on the page. What I like to do is I typically then step away from it, because otherwise I could be overwhelmed. Sometimes by dumping it out, I feel really motivated, and then I want to dive in. But sometimes you'll want to walk away from it. So really gauge how you feel when it comes to the mind dump. Are you feeling now really plugged in and energized, and you want to dive into coordinating and organizing things, or do you need a time to step away? Kathy, got to quote that. Brain is a computer, not a container. Quote away, my friend. So the next step, so you have it dumped down. Whether you do this right away or you step away and come back, doesn't matter. Whatever works best for you. Is I now look at that list, and to help me start to organize it so as to not feel overwhelmed, I'll start to categorize things. So if I do it on the computer, I use I think I've mentioned this before, I use workflowy.com. Simple, basic little to-do list program. You'll see it if you check it out. It's super basic, but I like that I can drag and drop my to-dos, and so after I dump out my mind, I will then organize it right on there, and I'll drag and drop things to be near other ones of, like, within a similar category, like these are the things I need to do for social media, or these are the things I need to do, these are errands I need to do, or these are calls I need to follow up on, or these are, gifts I need to buy. Whatever it is, I start to then take that list and categorize it in a way. So right away, I am also helping my brain to get back into computer processing mode and less container mode. So after I've dumped it, it wants to go to work and make sense out of what it now sees. And categorizing is a great kind of formulaic way for the brain to make sense of things. It operates well that way. It's like a really great filing system for the brain. Pamela, it's kind of like writing a first draft. Dump it and walk away from it. Yes, yes. Write that shitty first draft, walk away, come back, fresh eyes. It's fantastic. So once you have that mental, that mind dump, you have it all down on the page, and so now you've organized some of your thoughts. Some people can work off a disorganized list, and that's fine. I mean, if it's all in how you operate. I'm sharing what works for me. I can be, I'm a right brain creative, so my mind can be all over the place. I can get distracted by shiny objects or squirrels or any of those things. So if I categorize my to-do lists a bit, it helps me to stay on track. And so that's the to-do list part of it, that you can look at what you need to handle and what you need to do. What's interesting, when you dig in a little bit deeper to that, you can start to identify your specific aspects of mental clutter. So let's say on the list is something like, call Susie back. And when you see that and you get kind of a pit in your stomach, like, oh, I gotta call her back. There's any kind of like resistance or frustration, or like, I wish I didn't have to call her. That is indicative of a mental clutter issue. It's like, what's going on with you and Susie that makes you not want to call her? Is there, what is this relationship about? So the dreading having to call her is the mental clutter, in addition to the relationship that you have. So our to-do lists or to-do lists are a great way of seeing examples of clutter in our lives that we may not recognize otherwise. Because when you do that mind dump, that no censoring, no editing mind dump, and you just puke it all down, you can then look and see what's on your mind that you didn't really know you were given a whole lot of time or attention to, or that was even hanging out somewhere. So you can look at that list and go, oh my God, I didn't realize I was thinking about that. And you can identify on that mind dump, where's the clutter here? Disorganized thoughts is a form of clutter as well. So you can, by organizing your to-do list and your thoughts, immediately starts to clean up some clutter as well. And I'm telling you, with every little bit of clarity you can glean, or clutter you can clear, mental, physical, or otherwise, you feel amazing, and then you feel motivated to kind of keep it going. You get that rush. What I love to tell the clients and students that I work with is, we often think that we have to wait until we get that whole room cleared out, or all of our relationships cleaned up, that we think we have to get to the finish line before we get to feel the benefits of clutter clearing. It's not the case. You get to feel the relief of the finish line just by getting started. How cool is that? You get to feel the relief of the finish line just by getting started. With any kind of clutter clearing. Like, I know, has anyone here ever experienced that when you clear something, when you clear anything, that you then feel this infusion of energy of like, oh my God, that feels amazing. Like, you get to feel that expansiveness so soon, that it's such a beautiful reminder of how good it feels to stir up stale energy, to make some space and some room in your life. If you want things to feel easier, if you want to get more in that beautiful universal flow, you need to have the space to do so. There's no way you can be efficient, productive, resourceful, any of that stuff if your mind is so cluttered up. Yeah, so Trish, you've experienced that. Pamela, you have too. Yeah, it's amazing. Like, the clearing is just amazing. Melissa always jokes to me because I'll get rid of anything that's not nailed down. Like, it's gone. Like, I love to clear. I love clarity. I love space. It's interesting because I'm not like this super crazy neat freak, but I need visual clarity to feel at my best. And so if things start to get cluttered up, that is such a powerful indication for me that I'm neglecting my self-care. That if I'm letting that happen, if something like that is going on, there's a message in that clutter for me, which is what I talk about in my book that's coming out and in the past videos that I've done here. Kathy, it feels a lot less overwhelming and that you can accomplish the full goal quickly and completely. Yeah, exactly. Sarah donated a few bags of clothes a couple weeks ago and it felt great. See, it's just like, that's what I'm talking about. Like that, you don't have to get it all done to feel great, but a surefire way of getting it all done is by getting started. So that's why I talk about the Pomodoro technique, using that 25-minute time window to just get yourself going. And particularly with mental clutter, there's a good chance that your first Pomodoro round, is going to be on clearing resistance. That's going to often be the first kind of clutter that you need to clear, is your own resistance to clearing clutter. So it may be, and that's kind of like what the mind dump is, right? Like you just kind of dump that out. Thanks, Trish. You just kind of dump that out. But also, like let's say you're sitting down at whatever it is, physical clutter, or maybe you're looking at your mind dump and identifying the mental clutter that's on there that needs your attention. You're naturally going to have resistance to it. Otherwise, it would have already been handled, right? So the first part of clearing that you need to do is that resistance, and the best way to do that is to give voice to it. I like to journal out my resistance. Sometimes I'll even just sit here. I'll let myself grumble, like this is the last thing I want to do. I don't even want to deal with this pile. But then I take it a step further and ask myself, what is it about this pile? What is it about that relationship? What is it about that boundary I need to set that I don't want to deal with? What is it? What specifically is it within that clutter that I am resistant to? Identifying what it is specifically gives you incredible insight into what that message is in your clutter. So it's not that you're avoiding that pile of papers or even that conversation with that friend. You might be avoiding the bills that are in that pile of papers because you're feeling financially strapped, or you're avoiding the conversation with the friend because you're afraid that, she's going to explode on you and get really pissed and yell at you. So you're avoiding conflict. So digging into more specifically, what is it about that area of clutter that you're dreading dealing with so much will give you insight into what the message is for you there. Let's see, Sheila. Welcome, Sheila. Brain dumps are so freeing because once everything is on the page, it becomes more clear to me which ideas are necessary and which ones should be let go of, and that itself feels like progress. Sheila, you're singing my song, girl. Exactly. That's what I mean. You dump those thoughts out of the brain, and inevitably, you'll find stuff on that list that you thought was a to-do, but actually, you don't have to do it all. My sister Cheryl, in I think it was her first book, talked about, she will go through a to-do list and she does the do it, hire it, chuck it method. I love this method. Goes down the to-do list, identifies what on that list absolutely only you can do, like go to the doctor, for instance. What on that list could you theoretically hire out? Whether you literally hire someone to do it or you just ask someone for help. And what on that list can be chucked, meaning doesn't really need to be done at all. Now you can evaluate that list. So similar to what you're saying there, Sheila, is evaluating your list and going, does everything on this list even actually have to be done? The example I always use for my clients is, if you're looking to get rid of some magazines that have been sitting there for a while and you have on your list, go through magazines, that's a chuck it. If those magazines have been sitting there, let's say for 6 months or longer, it doesn't matter the time frame, going through them first is not required before getting rid of them. So that's an item on your to-do list that could be a chuck it. That's an example. Yeah, Kathy, to-dos and to-don'ts. Yeah, identifying what are the to-dos, what are the to-don'ts. Love that. That's going to really help with the mental clutter. As you handle this kind of, I'll call it easier mental clutter, the to-dos, identifying what actually needs to be done, what doesn't need to be done, etc. Then you create the space, and you create the space to handle the heavier mental clutter, the kind of more messy mental clutter, which can be difficult conversations you need to have with someone, a boundary you need to set, it's such shame that you need to heal. I always liked, particularly with mental clutter, I like to start with the easier things, because not only does it, I gain some traction, but I can immediately create some space, which allows me access to better resources within my own inner wisdom and external resources as well, to help me deal with the stickier mental clutter, the regrets from the past. I'm more able to easily access my wise self and say, anything I regret from the past is wasted energy, because everything I've been through, I have learned from. And every moment of my life, I was doing the very best I could at that time. 27-year-old Carrie couldn't have done it any differently. Whatever it is. So thinking back to those regrets you had, I wished I had done this sooner, or, whatever. There really is very little benefit that comes out of regrets unless you see them as opportunities for learning. So if I look back in my life and regret either not having done something sooner or not having said something to someone, I can use that as a tool now to not make that same mistake. So if you use it as a tool to grow and not a tool to beat yourself up, then it no longer becomes, it shifts from being mental clutter to being like spiritual wisdom, right? So that quickly you can shift mental clutter. If you find yourself beating yourself down in any way, shape, or form, through shame, regrets, woulda, shoulda, couldas, any of those things, you can stop and go, okay, well, knowing now what I know, how would I handle that situation in the past differently now? Because as Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. So you can't, yes, believe me, I have had that experience a lot where I say, man, what I wouldn't give to be, 27 years old again, 28 years old again, knowing then what I know now. It would be a very different experience. But even saying that, it's like, well, it's fun to fantasize, right? But it's not possible. I couldn't know then what I know now, because I needed those years to learn what I know now. Does that make sense? So these are ways, like reframing your thinking is an incredibly effective and powerful way to help shift mental clutter. So when you find yourself kind of ruminating about something, or hanging on to something longer than it really deserves, it's always stopping and looking under the hood. That is my whole approach when it comes to clutter. If stubborn clutter is always indicative of a non-clutter issue. So stubborn clutter is indicative of a non-clutter issue. So if it's something that has been bugging you for a long time, there's more going on with it than just the clutter. And again, whether that's physical clutter or mental clutter, it doesn't matter. If it's been a thorn in your side for a long time, it's not just clutter. And that's when you want to look at, what is the message underneath the clutter? What might this clutter be telling me? Pamela, wisdom does come with age. Oh my God, it so does. At the same time, you'd still learn the same lessons even with different people and circumstances. Exactly, Kathy. Even if you could go back, right? You just have different lessons to learn. You wouldn't be like this all-knowing Yoda at that age and not have any spiritual lessons to learn at all. It's so true, but it is tricky, right? I mean, God, I think about my nieces and nephews and how much I want to save them the stress and agony and pain of some of life's journey by, saying to them, wait, don't do that. I did that and you're going to regret it. And I've had some of those conversations with my nieces and nephews, and they've still gone ahead and made the decision that they made. And I remember it's because they have to walk their journey. Even at my age now, people can tell me that something I'm thinking about doing is a bad idea. If I don't think it's a bad idea, or I want to check it out enough myself, I'm still going to do it. I'll find out if it's a bad idea. But it's that nothing is really a bad idea. Believe me, there are exceptions to that, but everything is a learning opportunity, right? So much about clearing mental clutter is about reframing, is about shifting perspectives, is about looking at things in a new way. And that brings us to the idea of old beliefs and old conditioning. Now, several weeks back, one of my talks on Monday night was about beliefs. So old conditioning, old beliefs, old training, all of that is to say, I'm sure everyone has probably experienced this, but have you ever worked at a job where you saw a different way to do something that you think would be better, but the kind of response you got was, no, that's how we always do it. That's how we've always done it. That's how we'll always do it. That kind of response. It's like, well, wait a minute. What if there is a better way? It's similar to when we have old beliefs, old thinking, old conditioning, old training. When we've been doing a certain thing, a certain way, for a majority of our lives, it's hard to see another way. And this is particularly true with our thinking. If we were taught to think or learned how to think a certain way, because remember when I talked before about beliefs, that when you're a child, you are a computer downloading data about how the world operates. And so you are just observing your surroundings, your neighborhood, your friends, your family, the school, every place. You are just a sponge, and you're taking in information on how the world operates. Again, with the young brain, you're going to misinterpret some situations, and it's going to form these beliefs that then become the kind of rule book you live by without even realizing that you're doing it until you get older and you bump up against the beliefs and go, oh, wait a minute, that's actually not true. There's another option. Mental clutter around old beliefs is a big one, and it can make such huge shifts in your life when you learn how to identify it. And again, it's about the reframe, right? So some quick ways to help you figure out if some mental clutter you're hoarding is old thinking is to just listen for how you communicate. Do you tend to use global type statements like the world is, or people are, or I never? Those are those global statements. You'll hear when people say, why can't things ever be easy for me? Or they're always out to get you. I can't get a break. Whatever it is, those global type statements will point you to old conditioning. And so ask yourself, is that really true? Is that really true? That powerful shift in language can make such a big difference. I just recently read a blog post by Tony Robbins, and I think it was called Change Your Words, Change Your Life. And it is about this subtle reframe of situations that, I think one example he put in there was, if you were really angry at someone and you said to someone, oh my God, I'm so pissed at whoever, I'm so pissed at her, she did this and that, oh my God, I could just strangle her, I'm so mad. It's like, stop and ask yourself, are you really that mad? Does that situation warrant that kind of fury? Or are you just annoyed? Or are you just a little bit put off? This is going to be a ridiculous example, and it's going to reveal one of my guilty pleasures, but bear with me. So I watched that show, Little People, Big World, on TLC. And I was watching one last night, and you don't even need to know who the people are. It's a reality show, but they're the Roloffs. They own a farm. It's a whole thing. So Zach Roloff is a dwarf. He's a little person. He and his wife, who is an average-sized person, are having a baby. And they don't know if the baby's going to be a dwarf or not yet. And so his wife, whose name is Tori, trust me, this is going somewhere, said something on the show last night about, wow, you know, it'll be really scary if our baby is a dwarf. And it was so powerful because I saw Zach look at her. Now, these guys are like in their early 20s. Zach turned to her and said, Is scary the right word? Do you really mean scary? Like it will be scary to have a dwarf baby? Or do you mean that you're nervous at the idea? And it was such a moment that I was like, oh my God, change your words, change your life. You know, like he just had this charged, neutral, loving way of encouraging her to reframe, like, really? Is scary the right word? Or are you just uncertain or nervous? Trish, don't laugh at me. You probably watch it too, which is why you're laughing. It's a good show. But that's the reframe, right? It's like, is that really true? Do you, are you using bigger words than the situation calls for? Because that is a fast-track way of creating mental clutter. You know, if you, you often hear this from younger people, you know, teenagers, early 20s, like, oh my God, this is the worst day of my life. Or, Trish, I knew you watched it. I knew it. You'll hear people say, like, this is the worst day of my life, or I could just die, or, you know, just these really big dramatic statements when it's about a situation that doesn't warrant that kind of drama. Your body doesn't know the difference. You know, when you say things like that, your body is going to respond as if it's really a true possibility, a true threat, a true situation to get that stressed about. So being really mindful of the words you use is another really powerful way to start to eliminate and get your mental clutter in check. So reframing, different perspectives, powerful ways to handle some mental clutter. Lisa, I teach high school, and I'm always reminding students of the power of their words. First of all, Lisa, thank you for the work that you do. Not an easy job. And what a beautiful lesson to teach your students. It really is, you know, I mean, when I was a kid, I would do the same, very dramatic, you know, dramatic wording. That's not really true. So it is. I think that's such a great lesson, Lisa. I'm so glad. Thank you for doing that. Of just realizing, like, when you use certain words, your body responds in kind. You know, it's like how they say, your nervous system doesn't know if you're really being chased by a lion or if you think you're being chased by a lion. It's like they've done studies where they have shown like a video of someone being chased and people's nervous systems react. Your body doesn't know if that's you being chased or not. It's like our nervous system responds to the energy we ingest and the words that we use. So we can clear up a whole bunch of mental clutter by being really mindful about the language that we use, then when you're mindful about the language that you use, you can identify old thinking, training, beliefs that are no longer serving you, and you can start to reverse the effects of it. I mean, you truly can. Hey, Diane, I joined late. You could have said this, but exercise can get rid of mental clutter. That's a great point, Diane. I didn't say that. I was down today, my daughter made me take a walk, and I felt better. That is such a great point, Diane. I hadn't mentioned that. Exercise is such a powerful way to shift that mental clutter and to clear the mind. When you get that body moving, it's really good. Pamela, words matter. The power of words is so much deeper than people realize. So true, Pamela. I mean, so much deeper. Like, I mean, if you just think about it, like, it's the words that you use have such an impact, not only on the people you say it to, or even if that person is yourself. Words have such power. They really do. And as much as we can use them to beat ourselves down, we can use them to build ourselves up. So shifting that, mental clutter will be so much more easily cleared if you pay attention to your language. Kathy, I agree, Pamela. I tell my daughter how important and powerful her thoughts, beliefs, and words are. Awesome, Kathy. Yeah, they're super, super powerful. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What are some examples of mental clutter that you are currently dealing with, or that you think that you maybe didn't realize you were dealing with, but after talking about it a little bit here, you're like, wow, I do hold a lot in my head, or I do need to have this conversation that I'm avoiding, or I do find myself thinking a lot about the physical clutter I need to clear. Yeah, I'd love to hear some examples. And while you're all thinking about it and writing it down, I also want to mention, it is great. It's up in the pinned comment up at the top. You'll see that I have a Clutter Buster course starting soon. There's a link right in the comment section. You can click that link. Just finalizing some details of dates and times, but if you go to that page, you can click to email. It will generate an email to me that lets me know that you want to know when registration is open and when the details have been finalized. So we get to dig really deep into the messages in physical clutter, the messages in mental clutter, practical action steps and steps you can take to start to clear some of that. It's a live video once every 4 weeks. We've got a private Facebook group. There's worksheets. It's a thing. It's a thing. So check that out. Clutter Buster course starting soon. And yeah, if you have any examples of mental clutter you want to throw in the comments section while I just scroll through, make sure I'm not missing anything here. Would love to.
Kathy's comment, instead of saying no problem.
Oh, didn't see that. Oh yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. Instead of saying no problem when someone says thanks, I changed it to my pleasure because there was never a problem and it makes a huge difference. Oh I love that, Kathy. Love that. I have. Oh, thanks, Lee Marie. I have an old friend of mine. I met him when I first started working at the magazine. His name is John Michael. Still in touch with him. It's almost his birthday. Happy birthday, JM. He was the first person I heard. Anytime you would thank him, he would always say, my pleasure. And he really sounded like he meant it. And I thought, that's a really nice thing to say. So I love that, Kathy. That just reminded me of, he would always say that. And then he would just change it to pleasure. Like, my pleasure. But yes, I love that. No problem. Love that. Sarah, I feel and think about what I am doing for a project. The mountain seems daunting. Yeah, and I bet, you know what, Sarah? That mountain will be alleviated by the mind dump. Really. Especially if you're working on a project that feels overwhelming or feels daunting. Dump it out. Dump it out. A bit all the time. Yeah. Yeah, dump it out and you're immediately going to have access to the computer that wants to do this for you, and stop using that brain as a container. Trish, I'm dealing with a difficult coworker. She's a manager like myself. I find it difficult to deal with her. She put many employees down with her words, workplace bully. Tough one, Trish. Boundary is needed there, which I know is not always the easiest thing to do. But it sounds like a boundary is needed, particularly, in that situation, Trish. If you are having personal situations with her that you need to have a conversation with her about, if she's putting you down with her words, I'd want you to have a conversation with her about you. The other difference is because you're a manager and she's a manager, that does give you the authority to talk to her on behalf of your employees. I often say to people, don't speak for other people. Nothing lessens your position more than when you throw in something like, well, that's what everyone thinks. That's a bullying tactic. So I always, if you're going to confront someone about something, always have it be just from the I place. Little bit different in your situation because you're a manager and so is she. You can talk manager to manager, particularly if you've gotten some feedback from any of the employees about her language. You could then address it with her and say, listen, so-and-so has mentioned to me, of course with the employee's permission. But yeah, it sounds like a boundary is needed there, Trish. Otherwise, you're just going to dread going to work every day. The aggravation, frustration, and resentment is going to build up. Because I used to let stuff like that build up in the office place, and then I'd just be a real bitch. I would be a real bitch. So, see if you can have a conversation with her about that. Carol, what do I need to do for Mom today? Okay, she has Alzheimer's, and my current job is her personal assistant. Tough job, Carol. Feeling ignored by my husband versus me being an encouraging spouse. Reframing. Yeah, that's a big job, Carol. I mean, I totally get it. That's to always having to be thinking about, what do I need to do for Mom today? What do I need to do for Mom today? Are there some tools that you can use to make that easier? Like can there be a running punch list, or maybe there are recurring events that you need to do for her that you can put in your, use technology to your benefit, or use a list on your refrigerator. It sounds like there's an opportunity there for some systems to be put in place that could help you manage these tasks a little bit more seamlessly. That's a lot of energy that's required to do the job that you're doing. So anything you can do to make your life easier, to make your job easier, is absolutely going to benefit you and your mom, of course, and your marriage. So I'd encourage you to look at that. Hey, Lisa. Better late than never, absolutely. Happy to have you here. Kathy, sounds like you're shining your light and are leading by example, Trish. Yeah, it's beautiful. Oh, good, Carol. I've hired other people to help me visit her in assisted living. That's a perfect example. So that's great that you've done that, Carol. And also, just intuitively, what keeps coming up for me is systems. I keep hearing systems in my brain, in my mind. So I think that there's an opportunity for some systems to be put in place as well for you, Carol, about just how to streamline things some more, so you don't have to think every day, what do I need to do for Mom today, because it's already planned. Maybe do it right before you go to bed, something like that. Annie, I finally realized I have to get rid of my mental clutter before I can get rid of my physical clutter and guilt. That's so true, Annie. So true. Physical clutter and mental clutter are so entangled. And, people will come to me and they'll say, I've been trying to clean out my closet for years and I can't seem to make any progress. And I'll say to them, okay, and this is the whole idea, right, Annie, with the message under the mess. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about the contents of that closet, what they mean to you, and talk a little bit about what's the resistance around clearing that. A powerful way to begin to clear physical clutter that is stubborn is to look at what's the mental clutter within it. So you hit the nail right on the head, Annie. Absolutely. Okay, thanks. And that word totally is something my engineer husband likes. Okay, Carol, I wondered why I kept hearing systems in my head, so that makes sense. I'm kind of tapping into your husband there. So systems. Use your husband's an engineer. You tap into that engineer mind and see if he can help you put some systems in place. There's a message under the mess. That's right, Lisa. That's a whole chapter in my book that's coming out in August. The message in the mess. There's a message in every mess. Every type of clutter, every piece of clutter has an emotional component to it. Some is bigger than others. Sometimes it's really not anything other than my schedule's too full and I need to create the time to get to that clutter, or it's something much heavier, anything like that. So, thank you for asking, Lisa. Yes, you actually can pre-order the book. Let me see. Melissa.
On Amazon?
Yep. You can pre-order it on Amazon. Melissa's going to go grab that link for you right now and put it in the comment section. So yes, you can pre-order the book. I am currently working on some pre-order bonuses as well. So for anyone who pre-orders the book, they're going to get some bonuses as well. Even if you pre-order it before the bonuses are announced, the bonuses are retroactive. So just hang on to your receipt when you pre-order it, because we will need a number off of that receipt to make you eligible for the bonuses. So thanks for asking. Melissa's going to put it in the comments. It's going in now. All right, I know this was a little bit of a longer one tonight, guys, but it's a lot to this. I mean, as you know, clutter's my jam. It's just what I love. So yes, there's the link in the comments section. Thanks once. I'm going to pin that to the top as well. Oops, or I can't get to it. Facebook's acting wonky. Give me just a second, guys, and I'm going to pin that comment up there.
It's not even showing up on mine.
No, I can see it. I'm just trying to get to the little bugger. It's jumping all over the place. I want to curse, but I'm holding back. All right, I've pinned it. Okay. It is pinned to the top, so the pre-order is up there. Also, be sure to jump to my website, carrierichardson.com. If you're not subscribed to my weekly newsletter, be sure to do so. You get a really cool Clutter workbook that you can print out and do some exercises about your different clutter hotspots and what they might mean. It's really cool stuff there. Then you'll also get my weekly newsletter. And while you're there, you can also check out the Clutter Buster course, which is going to be starting soon. Click that link to let me know you want to know when registration is open, and you will be among the first to know. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night. Thank you, as always, for joining me on Convos with Carrie, Motivation Monday. And we'll be back next week, same time, same place. And we will talk then. Thanks so much, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Have a good week. Bye.